Commander Pete Jackson stood on the observation deck of New Horizons Station and watched the latest colony ship emerge from hyperspace. 2 years had passed since humanity left Council space, and the transformation had been remarkable beyond anyone's dreams. The ship approaching the station was built using human technology that the Council had never seen. Sleek, efficient, and fast, it carried 20,000 colonists to their new home on a world that humans had discovered and claimed in. A region of space the Council didn't even know existed. Dr. Rachel Kim joined him at the viewing port. The chief science officer looked younger than she had in years, energized by the freedom to pursue research without Council oversight. "How many new colonies does this make?" Pete asked. 47 in the past 6 months alone, Rachel said. "The construction drones are working faster than we can train colonists to populate the worlds they're building." Pete nodded, watching the colony ship dock with practiced efficiency. The evacuation from Council space had been only the beginning. Once freed from political constraints, human expansion had accelerated beyond all projections. "Any word from the deep space exploration fleets?" he asked. "Captain Williams reported 3 more habitable systems last week," Rachel said. "The new hyperspace drives are allowing us to reach regions that would have taken decades to explore using Council technology." Pete activated his personal display and pulled up a map of human space. The blue dots, representing human worlds and stations, spread across a vast region of the galaxy's outer spiral arm. Each dot represented thousands or millions of human lives, building something new. "Hard to believe we were ever afraid of leaving Council space," he said. Rachel smiled. "Fear makes people think small. Freedom makes them think big." A priority communication chimed on Pete's console. The face of Admiral Lisa Parker appeared on screen. She was transmitting from her flagship somewhere in the deep exploration zones. "Pete, Rachel," the Admiral said, "we've got some interesting news from the Border Scouts." "What kind of news?" Pete asked. "The kind that involves a Council delegation requesting permission to enter human space," Parker said. "They've been waiting at the edge of our territory for 3 weeks." Pete and Rachel exchanged glances. They had both expected this day would come eventually, but the timing was still surprising. "What do they want?" Rachel asked. "According to their transmission, they want to negotiate humanity's return to Council space," Parker said. "They're offering full autonomy, expanded territory, and representation in Council leadership." Pete almost laughed. "After everything they've lost, they still think they have something we want." "It gets better," Parker continued. "The delegation is led by Council Prime Zethkar himself. He brought 12 species representatives and what appears to be a substantial military escort." "Military escort?" Pete's tone sharpened. "Are they threatening us?" "Doubtful," Parker said. "Our scouts report their ships are using outdated technology and flying in defensive formations. They look more desperate than dangerous." Rachel activated her own display and pulled up intelligence reports from the border regions. "Our monitoring stations have been tracking increased Council military activity. Multiple conflicts breaking out across their territory." "Should we grant them permission to approach?" Pete asked. Parker's image paused as she consulted with her staff. "President Walsh is requesting a full briefing before making that decision. She wants to know exactly what we're dealing with." "Tell her we'll have a complete intelligence assessment ready within 6 hours," Pete said. The transmission ended, leaving Pete and Rachel alone with the implications of the Council's arrival. "They wouldn't come all this way unless their situation was truly desperate," Rachel said. Pete pulled up economic data from their intelligence networks. The reports painted a picture of systemic collapse across Council space. Production failures, trade route breakdowns, and military conflicts spreading like wildfire. "According to this data, 3 member species have already withdrawn from the Council," he said. 2 more are threatening to follow. "So they come to us?" Rachel said. "The species they tried to exile 6 months ago?" President Karen Walsh's face appeared on their communication screen, transmitting from Earth's new capital city of Haven. The city had been built in record time using the same modular technology that allowed rapid colony construction. "Pete, Rachel," the president said, "I need your assessment of the situation." "The council is facing complete collapse," Pete reported. "Without human infrastructure, their economy cannot function. Without human peacekeeping, their member species are at each other's throats." "What are they offering?" Walsh asked. "Everything they refused to give us before," Rachel said. "Full autonomy, expanded territory, leadership positions. They're essentially offering to make humans the dominant species." In council space, Walsh was quiet for a moment, considering the implications. "And what do you recommend?" Pete looked out at the colony ship, where thousands of humans were preparing to start new lives on a world they would build from scratch. "I recommend we let them wait a little longer." "Why?" "Because they need to understand that we don't need them anymore," Pete said. "In 2 years, we've built a civilization that's more advanced, more efficient, and more free than anything the Yi Council ever achieved." Rachel nodded agreement. "Our technology has advanced decades beyond Council standards. Our expansion rate exceeds their entire historical average. We've proven that humans don't just survive in isolation. We thrive." Walsh smiled with quiet satisfaction. "Schedule a meeting with their delegation, but make them come to us. I want Zethkar to see what humans can build when nobody tries to limit us." 2 days later, Council Prime Zethkar stood in the reception hall of New Horizons Station and tried to hide his amazement. The station was larger and more advanced than anything in Council space. The technology on display was decades ahead of what he thought possible. President Walsh entered the hall with quiet dignity. She wore the simple blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, but her presence commanded the room with authority that needed no symbols. "Council Prime," she said with polite formality, "you wanted to discuss humanity's return to Council space." Zethkar's scales shifted through several colors before settling on submissive green. "President Walsh, the Council recognizes that we made an error in judgment regarding humanity's place in galactic civilization." "An error in judgment," Walsh repeated. "Is that what you call trying to cage an entire species? We offer full pardons for your rejection of our ultimatum," Zethkar said quickly. "Complete autonomy within Council space. Expanded territorial rights, even leadership positions within the Council itself." Walsh walked to the viewing port and looked out at the construction, projects visible in the distance. New ships, new stations, new colonies taking shape with impossible speed. "You misunderstood our nature from the beginning," she said finally. "We didn't need your permission to be free. We don't need your permission now. But the galaxy needs stability," Zethkar protested. "The Council provides order, trade, diplomatic solutions to conflicts. Your Council provides stagnation," Walsh said. "You taught us that some silences speak louder than words. Listen to the silence where human voices used to be. That's the sound of consequences." Zethkar's delegation shuffled nervously behind him. They had come expecting to negotiate humanity's return. Instead, they were learning that humanity had moved beyond their reach entirely. "What do you want from us?" Zethkar asked desperately. Walsh turned back to face him. "Nothing. We want nothing from you. That's what you never understood. We don't need your approval, your territory, or your trade routes. We have built something better. But surely some arrangement—" "The Council will maintain control over its diminished territories," Walsh said with finality. "Humanity will continue building our civilization based on cooperation rather than dominance. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply walking away and building something better elsewhere." The Council delegation departed without the agreements they had hoped for. Behind them, humanity continued its expansion into regions of space that the Council had never dreamed of exploring. In the end, the Council learned too late that trying to cage humanity hadn't made them safer. It had just made them smaller. The blue lights of the Galactic Council chamber flickered as hundreds of alien beings gathered for their monthly meeting. Representatives from 847 different worlds sat in their special chairs, each designed for their unique body types. Some looked like giant insects, others resembled walking trees, and a few appeared as floating clouds of gas. At the far end of the massive hall, 12 humans sat quietly in simple metal chairs. Admiral Jake Morrison adjusted his dark blue uniform and looked around the enormous room. Even after 50 years of membership, humans still felt like newcomers in this ancient gathering. The other species had been working together for over 3,000 years, building trade routes and keeping peace across the galaxy. Humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel recently, and the Council had accepted them as the newest members. The meeting began as it always did. Chancellor Vextar, a tall gray alien with 4 arms and no visible mouth, spoke through a translation device that filled the air with different sounds and languages. Each species heard the words in their own tongue. "We gather today to discuss the growing threat from the Zephyrian Empire," the Chancellor announced. "They have taken control of 3 peaceful worlds in the past 6 months. Their military grows stronger each day." Morrison knew about the Zephyrians. They were a warrior race that controlled 47 star systems. Their ships were huge and covered in weapons. Most council members feared them, but few wanted to fight. The galaxy had enjoyed peace for so long that most species had forgotten how to wage war. Ambassador Lisa Rodriguez, the head of the human diplomatic team, raised her hand to speak. She was a small woman with brown hair and kind eyes, but her voice carried well in the large chamber. "The human delegation offers medical supplies and humanitarian aid to any worlds affected by Zephyrian expansion," she said. "We also propose sending our diplomatic ships to help with evacuation efforts." Several alien representatives made approving sounds. This was what humans always did during conflicts. They offered help, medical care, and peaceful solutions. No one expected anything else from them. The crystalline entity known as the Communion spoke next. It looked like a massive diamond floating in the air, and its voice sounded like singing crystal. "The humans show wisdom as always, but wisdom alone cannot stop Zephyrian warships." Morrison remained silent. He commanded the human space fleet, all 12 ships currently stationed at the edge of Council territory. Compared to other species, it was a tiny force. The Altarians had over 500 warships. The Kepler Federation maintained 300 vessels. Even small civilizations like the Tree People had 50 or 60 combat ships. The humans had exactly 12 vessels, and most other species considered them to be exploration ships rather than true warships. They carried some weapons, but mainly for defense against space pirates and asteroids. Council records listed humanity as having one of the weakest military forces among all member species. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives wanted to send strongly worded messages to the Zephyrian Empire. Others suggested economic sanctions. A few brave souls mentioned the possibility of military action, but they were quickly shouted down by species that preferred peaceful solutions. Captain Alex Turner, Morrison's second-in-command, leaned over and whispered, "Same discussion as last month, sir. Lots of talk, no action." Morrison nodded, but said nothing. Turner was young and sometimes forgot that other species could hear human whispers quite clearly. The Admiral had learned to be very careful about what he said in council meetings. As the session dragged on, Morrison thought about the reports he received from Earth each week. The messages came through secure channels that no other council species could intercept. They contained information that would shock every alien in this chamber, but Morrison kept that knowledge locked away in his mind. The meeting ended with the usual result. The council would send another diplomatic message to the Zephyrians asking them to stop their expansion. They would offer trade incentives and peaceful negotiations. Meanwhile, the Zephyrian war machine continued to grow stronger. After the session, Morrison and his team returned to their quarters in the council station. The human section was small and simple compared to the elaborate homes of other species. Humans preferred basic accommodations and spent most of their time working rather than decorating. Rodriguez joined Morrison in his office, a plain room with a metal desk and 2 chairs. Maps of local star systems covered one wall, showing trade, routes, and diplomatic missions. "How long do you think before the Zephyrians attack a major world?" she asked. Morrison studied the star charts. "Intelligence reports suggest they are planning something big. The Kepler mining colonies would be an obvious target. Lots of valuable resources and weak defenses." Rodriguez nodded grimly. "If they hit Kepler, there will be thousands of casualties. Workers from dozens of different species live there, including 347 humans." The Admiral remained quiet for a long moment. He knew things that Rodriguez did not know, secrets that only the highest levels of Earth's government were aware of. But orders were orders, and his job was to maintain the peaceful image that humanity had carefully built over 50 years. "We will continue offering humanitarian aid and diplomatic solutions," Morrison said finally. "That is what the Council expects from us." Rodriguez looked surprised. "Jake, if the Zephyrians attack civilian targets, we cannot just stand by and watch. The Council may be afraid to fight, but surely we can do something." Morrison met her eyes, but kept his expression neutral. "Lisa, we will follow our orders from Earth Command. Nothing more, nothing less." She left his office looking confused and frustrated. Morrison did not blame her. From her perspective, humanity seemed weak and unwilling to defend innocent people. She had no idea about the messages he received each week from Sol's system, or the preparations that had been underway for decades. The Admiral returned to studying his star charts, noting the positions of Zephyrian fleets and the locations of potential targets. Soon, very soon, the galaxy would learn that humans were not the peaceful, helpless species they appeared to be. But until that moment came, Morrison would continue playing his role as the commander of a small, insignificant fleet that posed no threat to anyone. Captain Alex Turner was reviewing supply reports when the emergency communication signal came through. The red light on his desk blinked 3 times, paused, then blinked 3 times again. This was the code for messages from Earth Command, the most secure communication channel in the human fleet. Turner activated his personal decoder and watched as the message appeared on his screen. He read it once, then read it again to make sure he understood correctly. His hands shook slightly as he reached for his communication device. "All senior officers to the briefing room immediately," he announced ship-wide. "Priority Alpha." Within minutes, the command staff of the UES Meridian gathered around the metal table in the small briefing room. Commander Nina Walsh, the ship's tactical officer, looked concerned. Lieutenant Sam Parker, who handled communications, appeared confused. Dr. Peter Johnson, the fleet's science advisor, adjusted his glasses nervously. Turner read the message aloud. "All human vessels are to withdraw from Council space immediately and return to Sol system for reassignment. No exceptions. No delays. Departure time. Within 6 hours of receiving this message." The room fell silent. Commander Walsh was the first to speak. "Sir, we have humanitarian missions scheduled for the next 3 months. The medical supplies for the Andorian colonies alone would save thousands of lives." Turner looked at the message. Again. "Orders are orders, Commander. We leave in 6 hours." Across the human fleet, similar scenes played out on all 12 ships. Captains received the same message and began immediate preparations for departure. Medical supplies were packed away. Diplomatic equipment was secured. Scientists canceled their research projects and gathered their data. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his fleet prepare to leave. Other Council ships in the area sent confused messages asking about the sudden human withdrawal. He replied with standard diplomatic language about reviewing strategic priorities and consulting with Earth Command. The truth was much more complicated. 3. Days earlier, the Zephyrians had attacked the Kepler mining colonies without warning. Their warships had appeared in the system and began bombing civilian targets. Mining platforms exploded. Transport ships carrying families and children were destroyed. When the attack ended, over 4,000 beings were dead, including 347 humans. The Galactic Council had responded with their usual methods. They sent messages expressing concern. They offered humanitarian aid. They proposed peace talks. The Zephyrians ignored them completely and began moving their fleets toward more targets. Morrison received his real orders through a channel so secret that only 5 people in the entire galaxy knew it existed. The message was short and clear. Execute Deep Strike Protocol. Full military authorization granted. Show them what humans can do. As the human fleet entered hyperspace and disappeared from Council territory, emergency meetings began on hundreds of worlds. Chancellor Vexitar called for an immediate session of the full Council. The Crystalline Communion analyzed every human communication from the past year, looking for clues about their sudden departure. Ambassador Rodriguez found herself answering the same questions over and over again. "I do not know why Earth Command recalled our ships," she told worried council members. "I am waiting for instructions just like everyone else." This was not entirely true. Rodriguez had received a brief message telling her to maintain diplomatic presence and await further developments. She had no idea what those developments might be, but something in the tone of the message made her nervous. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center of Luna Base and watched the largest military mobilization in human history. For 50 years, Earth had maintained the fiction that humans were a peaceful species with minimal military capabilities. The 12 diplomatic ships were real, but they represented only a tiny fraction of humanity's true strength. Hidden shipyards throughout the solar system had been building warships for decades. Mars Base housed the construction facilities for heavy cruisers and dreadnoughts. The asteroid belt contained secret stations where advanced fighters and bombers were assembled. Even the moon's dark side had been converted into a massive military complex. Captain Ryan Brooks commanded the first battle group from the bridge of the UES Defiance, a ship 3 times larger than any vessel the Council had ever seen from humanity. His force consisted of 47 ships, including massive dreadnoughts equipped with weapons that could crack planets and stealth frigates that could disappear from all known sensor systems. Commander Nina Walsh had been transferred from the diplomatic fleet to serve as tactical officer on one of the new warships. She stood in the Combat Information Center and marveled at the technology surrounding her. Quantum torpedo launchers lined the walls. Energy shields strong enough to stop asteroid impacts hummed with power. Fighter bays held craft that could outmaneuver anything in the galaxy. "How long has all this existed?" she asked Captain Danny Clark, who commanded the stealth squadron. "We started planning it the day after first contact with the Council," Clark replied. Earth's leaders took one look at galactic politics and realized that peace only lasted as long as the strong allowed it. "We decided to make sure humanity would never be weak. The human war fleet that assembled in Sol system would have shocked even the most powerful Council species. Over 300 ships of various classes, all equipped with technology that surpassed anything else in the galaxy. Weapon systems based on principles that alien scientists had never discovered. Shield generators that could absorb energy attacks and redirect them back at enemies. Dr. Johnson supervised the final preparations from the science ship UES Discovery. His teams had spent decades studying every battle the Council had ever fought, analyzing alien tactics and developing countermeasures. They knew the weaknesses of every ship design, the limitations of every weapon system, and the flaws in every strategic doctrine used by galactic militaries. "Are we really going to do this?" asked Major Beth Rodriguez, who commanded one of the assault groups. 50 years of pretending to be peaceful, and now we reveal our true strength?" Admiral Sullivan nodded grimly. "The Zephyrians have made it clear that diplomacy will not stop them. They murdered human civilians and ignored every attempt at peaceful. Resolution: the Council is too afraid to act, so we will act for them, As the human fleet prepared to leave Sol's system, messages continued to arrive from the Galactic Council. Some demanded explanations for the human withdrawal. Others begged for the return of medical supplies and humanitarian aid. A few warned that abandoning the galaxy during a crisis would damage human standing in the Council. Morrison, now commanding the war fleet from the bridge of the UES Defiance, read each message carefully before deleting it. The time for diplomacy had passed. The Zephyrians wanted war, and they were about to discover that humans were very good at giving people what they wanted. The final preparations took 3 days. When they were complete, Admiral Sullivan gave the order that would change galactic politics forever. All ships enter hyperspace. Destination: Zephyrian space. It is time to introduce ourselves properly. The largest human military force ever assembled disappeared into the void between stars, heading toward a confrontation that would shock every civilization in the galaxy. The Zephyrian war fleet moved through space like a storm of metal and fire. 237 ships formed perfect attack formations as they approached the Andorian homeworld. Admiral Kethvar, the supreme commander of Zephyrian forces, stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the tactical displays with satisfaction. The Andorians were next on his list of targets. Their world contained valuable mineral deposits, and their people were known for their advanced manufacturing techniques. More importantly, they had refused to surrender when offered the chance, choosing instead to trust in the protection of the useless Galactic Council. "Sir, we are detecting unknown contacts ahead," reported the sensor officer, a young Zephyrian warrior with fresh scars across his face. Kethvar looked at the tactical screen. Dozens of red dots appeared directly in their path, ships that had not been there moments before. "Identification? Unknown, sir. The ships do not match any designs in our database. They appear to have emerged from hyperspace directly in front of our fleet." The Admiral growled deep in his throat, a sound that made lesser Zephyrians step backward. "Pirates, perhaps? Or scavengers hoping to pick through the wreckage after our victory. Signal them to move aside or be destroyed." On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Admiral Morrison watched the Zephyrian fleet approach. His tactical officers had been tracking their movement for 3 days, calculating the perfect intercept point. Now the moment had arrived. "Open a channel to the Zephyrian flagship," Morrison ordered. "All frequencies, full broadcast." Lieutenant Commander Sam Parker nodded and activated the communication system. Every ship in both fleets would hear what happened next. More importantly, every council monitoring station in the sector would record the conversation. Morrison stepped forward and spoke in a calm, clear voice. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the United Earth Space Command. You have 47 minutes to withdraw all forces from occupied territories and surrender unconditionally." The communication channel crackled with static before Kethvar responded. His voice carried the arrogance of a warrior who had never lost a battle. "Human, you command 12 small ships and dare to threaten the mighty Zephyrian Empire? Your species is weak and pathetic. Stand aside or be crushed like insects." Morrison smiled coldly. "Admiral, you are looking at sensor readings from 50 years ago. Allow me to provide updated information." On cue, the human fleet dropped their stealth fields and revealed their true numbers. Where the Zephyrians had detected 12 small ships, over 100 massive warships suddenly appeared on their sensors. Dreadnoughts larger than space stations, carriers launching clouds of fighters, cruisers bristling with weapon systems that defied easy classification. The silence on the Zephyrian communication channel lasted for nearly 30 seconds. When Kethvar spoke again, his voice carried less certainty. "Impressive deception, humans. But numbers alone do not win battles. Our ships are proven in combat against dozens of species. Yours are untested." 46 minutes remaining, Morrison replied. Kethvar cut the communication and immediately began issuing orders to his fleet. "All ships, Attack Formation Delta 7. Focus fire on their largest vessels. These humans may have hidden their strength, but they have never faced Zephyrian military doctrine. The first Zephyrian missiles launched 3 minutes later. Thousands of projectiles streaked across space toward the human fleet, each one capable of destroying a city. Zephyrian plasma cannons charged to full power, preparing to deliver killing blows to any ships that survived the initial barrage. Captain Danny Clark commanded the human stealth squadron from the bridge of the UES Shadow. His 12 ships had remained invisible even after the main fleet revealed itself. As the Zephyrian missiles approached, Clark gave the order his crews had been waiting for. All units, execute flanking maneuver Alpha. Time to show them what humans learned from studying their tactics. The stealth ships appeared behind the Zephyrian fleet like ghosts materializing from empty space. Their quantum torpedoes struck Zephyrian engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. Ships that had been charging their plasma cannons suddenly found themselves powerless and drifting. Meanwhile, the main human fleet demonstrated defensive capabilities that shocked every observer. Energy shields absorbed missile impacts that should have destroyed entire ships. Point defense systems tracked and eliminated incoming projectiles with accuracy that bordered on supernatural. When the Zephyrian barrage ended, not a single human vessel had taken significant damage. Impossible, Kethvar whispered as he stared at his tactical displays. No shields are that strong. No defense systems are that accurate. Major Beth Rodriguez led the human fighter wings into battle with tactics that no galactic military had ever seen. Instead of the traditional close formations favored by most species, human fighters operated in small groups that appeared and disappeared unpredictably. They struck at weak points in Zephyrian defenses, crippled key systems, and vanished before enemy guns could target them. Lieutenant Sam Parker coordinated the electronic warfare assault from his position on the Defiance. Human ships projected false sensor readings that made the Zephyrian fleet see threats that did not exist while hiding real attacks until the last possible moment. Zephyrian communication systems began failing as human cyber warfare programs infiltrated their networks. The battle that Council observers had expected to last for hours was over in less than 3. When the fighting ended, 193 Zephyrian ships had been either destroyed or disabled. The remaining vessels surrendered when their engines failed and their life support systems began shutting down. Admiral Morrison opened a new communication channel, this time broadcasting, to every Council monitoring station in the galaxy. This is Admiral Morrison of the United Earth Space Command. The Zephyrian threat to peaceful civilizations has been neutralized. Any species or government that continues aggressive expansion will face similar consequences. On Council worlds, throughout the galaxy, emergency sessions convened as leaders tried to understand what they had just witnessed. The humans, who had seemed weak and helpless for 50 years, had just destroyed the most powerful military force in known space. Chancellor Vextar stood in the council chamber and addressed the emergency assembly. We have underestimated humanity. Their military capabilities exceed our most advanced projections. We must immediately reassess our understanding of this species. The crystalline communion floated in the center of the chamber, its crystalline structure pulsing with colors that indicated deep thought. The humans have revealed strength that surpasses our own. Their technology operates on principles we do not understand. Their tactics are unlike anything in our military databases. Ambassador Rodriguez received a new message from Earth Command as the Council debated. It was brief and direct. Maintain diplomatic presence. Explain that humanity prefers peace but will enforce it when necessary. Full disclosure protocols are now authorized. For the first time in 50 years, Rodriguez could tell the Council the truth about her species. Humans were not weak. They were not helpless. They had simply been patient, waiting for the right moment to reveal their true nature. The galaxy would never be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been running for 6 days straight. Representatives from 847 worlds demanded answers about humanity's hidden military strength. Some species spoke of betrayal and deception. Others wondered what other secrets the humans might be hiding. Chancellor Vex Tar called for order as voices rose throughout the massive chamber. "We have summoned Dr. Peter Johnson, Earth's chief military scientist, to provide explanations for humanity's capabilities. The Council demands full disclosure." Dr. Johnson walked to the center of the chamber, a small human figure surrounded by hundreds of alien beings. He wore a simple gray suit and carried a data pad containing information that would change Galactic. Politics forever. Despite the pressure of the moment, his voice remained calm and steady. "Honored representatives, I will answer your questions honestly. But first you must understand the perspective from which humanity approached galactic civilization." The chamber fell silent. Every species wanted to hear what the humans had to say. Johnson activated his datapad and projected images into the air above the chamber. "When we achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, our first action was to study this council and its history. We discovered a pattern that concerned our leaders. The images showed star charts and battle records spanning 3,000 years. Johnson pointed to specific conflicts and territorial changes. Every few centuries, a militaristic species emerges and threatens peaceful civilizations. The Zephyrians were simply the latest example. Before them, it was the Crimson Horde. Before that, the Void Stalkers. Each time, the Council responded with diplomacy and humanitarian aid while innocent beings died. Murmurs of discomfort rippled through the chamber. Several representatives shifted in their seats, remembering species that had been lost to aggressive expansion. "Humanity made a decision," Johnson continued. "We would not depend on the hope that peace would last forever. We would prepare for the day when diplomacy failed and force became necessary." Chancellor Vexitar raised one of his 4 arms. "Dr. Johnson, the Council's records show that your species maintained only 12 small vessels. How do you explain the fleet that defeated the Zephyrians?" Johnson smiled slightly. "Those 12 ships were our diplomatic fleet, exactly as advertised. Our military fleet was built in secret facilities throughout the Sol system. We have been preparing for interstellar conflict since the day we joined this council." The crystalline. Communion pulsed with bright colors, indicating extreme agitation. "You deceived us for 50 years. You allowed us to believe humanity was weak while you built weapons in secret." "We allowed you to believe what you wanted to believe," Johnson corrected. "Humanity never claimed to be weak. We simply chose not to reveal our strength until it became necessary." Captain Helen Foster, who had arrived with Johnson, activated her own data display. As an intelligence officer, she had spent decades studying galactic military capabilities. "We observed every conflict this council has faced. We analyzed alien tactics, weapon systems, and strategic doctrines. We identified weaknesses in your defenses and developed countermeasures." The images she projected showed detailed analysis of dozens of alien ship designs. Human scientists had discovered flaws in Altarian shield generators, weaknesses in Kepler weapon systems, and gaps in crystalline defensive formations. No galactic military had secrets from humanity anymore. "This is espionage," accused the representative, "from the Void Walker Republic. You spied on council members while pretending to be our allies." Foster remained calm. "We observed public military exercises and analyzed data that was freely available. Every species in this chamber does the same thing. The difference is that we were more thorough in our analysis." Dr. Johnson continued his presentation with technical details that left many representatives confused and others frightened. Human. Weapon systems operated on principles that alien science had not discovered. Their energy shields used quantum mechanics in ways that should have been impossible. Their faster-than-light drives incorporated technology that was centuries ahead of Council standards. "How did you achieve such rapid advancement?" asked the representative from the tree people. Our civilizations have developed technology over thousands of years. You accomplished more in 50 years than most species manage in millennia. Humans think differently, Johnson explained. We approach problems from multiple angles simultaneously. We combine theoretical research with practical application. We are not afraid to test dangerous ideas or pursue unconventional solutions. Commander Luke Stone stepped forward to address military questions. His special operations teams had been responsible for disabling Zephyrian command systems during the recent battle. Human military doctrine emphasizes speed, precision, and overwhelming force applied at critical points. We do not fight prolonged battles. We end conflicts quickly and decisively. The questions continued for hours. Representatives wanted to know about human population, industrial capacity, and long-term intentions. Johnson answered each query with careful honesty, revealing enough information to satisfy the Council while keeping certain details classified. "How many ships does humanity actually possess?" asked Chancellor Vextar. Admiral Sullivan had arrived during the session and answered this question herself. "The fleet that defeated the Zephyrians represents approximately 1/3 of our total military capacity. We maintain additional battle groups in reserve for emergency situations." The mathematical implications of this statement sent shockwaves through the chamber. If humans had used only 1/3 of their strength to destroy the most powerful military in the galaxy, their full capabilities were beyond anything the Council had imagined. "What are humanity's intentions regarding Council space?" asked the Communion. Ambassador Rodriguez stood to answer this critical question. "Humanity seeks the same thing we have always sought: peace and prosperity for all civilized species. The difference is that we are now prepared to enforce that peace when diplomacy fails." "You speak of enforcement," said the Altarian representative. "Who gave humanity the authority to act as galactic police?" Rodriguez looked around the chamber, at hundreds of alien faces. "The same authority that allowed the Zephyrians to murder thousands of innocent beings while this council debated diplomatic solutions. The authority of superior strength used in defense of those who cannot defend themselves." The chamber erupted in heated discussions. Some species denounced human actions as vigilante justice. Others praised humanity for doing what the council had been unwilling to do. A few representatives quietly approached Rodriguez to inquire about military cooperation agreements. Dr. Johnson raised his hand for attention. "There is one more thing the Council should know. Our analysis indicates that 3 other species in this chamber are currently developing aggressive expansion plans similar to the Zephyrians. We are monitoring their activities closely." This statement caused an immediate uproar. Representatives demanded to know which species were under suspicion. Johnson refused to provide details but made it clear that humanity was watching everyone. "The age of unopposed aggression is over," Admiral Sullivan announced as the session began to wind down. "Any species that chooses the path of conquest will face the combined strength of humanity and our allies. We prefer peace, but we will not hesitate to defend the innocent." As the emergency session finally ended, representatives returned to their worlds carrying news that would reshape galactic civilization. The quiet humans had revealed themselves to be the most powerful military force in known space. Some species would seek their protection. Others would plot against them. All would have to acknowledge that the balance of power had shifted forever. In her private quarters, Ambassador Rodriguez reviewed the day's events and prepared her report for Earth Command. The revelation phase was complete. Now came the more difficult task of building a new order based on human strength and alien cooperation. The galaxy had learned that humanity was not weak. Soon they would discover whether humans could be wise enough to use their power responsibly.